huge collective effort. Now, we've been saying, like in Feasta, some of these things for quite a few years, and we end up, now, not all of them are, some of them are a little more optimistic than I, so I won't claim to speak for everyone, but I'm not alone in my doomish analysis. We've been saying these things for quite a few years, and we've tended to be on the periphery of things. It's easy to ignore. You know, if Obama, the Dalai Lama, the Pope, John Paul Getty, whoever it is, all line up and say we have a big problem, you know, there will be an impact. If I do it, or people in Feasta do it, or the oil drum do it, it's all right, because we can be dismissed as a fringe opinion, which is obviously not the mainstream, as we all know. Sort of the ERSI, the IMF, and the OECD always get the projections correct. But one thing that started happening very recently that gives me a worry is that I'm starting to get contacted by people working in financial markets, by hedge funds, etc. Now, what this means and why we're at risk from this sort of thing, or why we need to be proactive, is that one of the signs or things that people say there is no longer going to be economic growth. What do we bet on economic growth? It's all your pensions, by the way, if you have them. But all the stock market, all the bond market, that you'll pay them back, businesses won't be there, bond market, stock market, commodities even, are all effectively valueless, or will be. So there's this much paper wealth. All of those people who think they're wealthy, mostly it's in paper. And in order to buy something, you need to convert it to money. If only a small fraction of these people try to get out of this paper wealth by selling their bonds or selling their shares, well, there's very little money flowing in the economy to go through. So it means, but only a few get through. They then might try to buy land or other resilient assets. But the point is, this effectively can evaporate very quickly with only a small number. And if people in financial markets are starting to worry about this, in certain parts of financial markets, you know that it's a danger time. People are starting to get very worried. That means for us that we need to be cognizant of the time. So, if I was to say, I was really going to call this talk, purpose in an age of uncertainty. And I wanted to kind of explore myself, because while I'm an analyst, in all of these other things, as a person, as a narrative of what's happening, I'm a citizen and a person like you guys trying to wonder what to do. I don't have a garden, I can't grow food, I live in the city, etc., etc. I don't really have options for moving at the moment. All of these things, so, on the personal side. So, how do we move forward? How do we really jumpstart this? Well, one of the things is, I think, we need to accept that the things that held us before are going to fall away, or at greater risk of falling away. Health systems and all of that, and we need to start accepting it. Like those old parables of blowing with the wind, the sheaf of wheat, blows with the wind, it's a lot easier. If you start rigid against it, it breaks. We don't want it to break, we want to start moving with it. We need a huge amount of ways to begin approaching that across all people's skills. And that has to be part of, I think, a new way of talking to ourselves and understanding ourselves, a new narrative. And that narrative is probably going to be one that is, for ourselves, a pretty heroic one, or it can be. I was looking at one of Winston Churchill's speeches a few weeks ago, and it was interesting, because he did something that environmentalists traditionally have been terrible at. They need to put in happy endings and sugarcoatings and all of that. But if you look at Winston Churchill's speeches, it's all, we are facing a challenge. It is going to be hard. It will be this, bump, 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 bump. So there was never any shirking the fact. He didn't say, we will fight them on the beaches, but there will be ice cream and time for swimming. No, we're in trouble, just as we are. But that doesn't mean that we need to despair at all. Because what we have is each other. We have some very other fortunate things. We live in an island that's fertile, that has great potential. We live as a pretty cohesive society. We're not driving each other nuts like in parts of the American media that you see where it just seems to be on the cusp of people tearing their heads off over ideological differences. That's a good thing. So, if we were to get a new purpose, saying, well, we have good things going for us, we're going to go through a rough time, what might our purpose be? Well, our purpose could be, we have new learning to do. We have new work to do. We have new relationships to make with each other, with our wider communities, with the nation. We have new responsibilities to take on. Responsibilities that we once casually left to the state, and we complain about them when they don't do it, but this will be on them. You cannot blame them or give out to them and say you aren't solving all our problems. This is one that we take on that responsibility. Just like our grandparents and great-grandparents did. It's not a new thing. We're the freaks in human history. We're the unusual ones who stand out. So, in those sort of things that we can find amongst us, I think that what we will be able to do is we go through a very difficult period and we find a new equilibrium where lives can be lived well, contentedly, with interest and all of these things. You know, for people who are interested in games or arts or crafts or all of these that can be rich lives, but we will be very poor. But that's all right, because we know poverty, being relatively poor, does not hurt us. We adapt to it. We are not the happiest generation just because we are the richest generation. It doesn't work. There's plenty of evidence about that. But we need to go through this. And I think that if we were to say, well, what do we do? What do you do tomorrow? What do I do? Besides learning about these things, which is helpful, and talking to people, I think that there's so many things I could say, but there's also, it would go off into all of these different things. In a way, we need, and I want all of you people to start saying, what can I do? How can we do something big? How can we do something urgent? So if food security is an issue, let's say that, what happens if our supply chains break down, or over time? What might we do here? We could lobby, but frankly, so far, lobbying has been pretty futile, because it can be easily ignored. So it could be turbo-powered lobbying, whatever that is. How would you do it? What skills could you use? There's also about, you know, I just think there's so much to do. I was talking to some people who were unemployed a while ago, and I was kind of going, you're not unemployed. Unemployed is a freakish state that grew in the last 100 years of wage labour. Unemployed gives you the freedom to do important things. Because whatever you're doing when you're not being employed is far more important than whatever you were doing when you were being employed. And if you put it from food security to local business development or networks, to hammering down doors, to explaining to people, I mean, we need materials. Can anybody write here? Can anybody draw? How do you communicate these things to people who might be frightened? Who are saying, why are we keep losing jobs? Oh my God, what's happening? There's a bank run. Why can't the government stop it? How do we explain that to people in a way that they can understand? And how do we take that sort of potentially negative energy and turn it around and say, what needs to be done? There are new skills to be learned. We will be, you know, we're a nation of horses, it said. We will be using a lot more horses in the future. Not thoroughbred race horses, but we will be using draft horses. We need a whole new range of skills, and we don't have them. That means people have to learn them. That means new skills. And if people ask what to do with your money, we know exactly what to do with your money. If you want to do something useful now, get your money out of wherever it is and put it into something creative like a local business. There's all sorts of new businesses that need to be developed that we never thought we'd need. And we, of course, in all of these journeys, we need each other. And one thing that I would love to see, and I'm not the person to do it, it's done by other people, is besides transition towns, I'd love a wider network, a way of arranging so that we can have a type of national conversation, a skill swap, a knowledge swap, a support network that allows us as citizens to get the sort of traction that we're not going to get knocking on the doors of government in any easy or short time. Who'll do that? It's not going to be us. It's not going to be the government that's going to do it. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope I haven't frightened you, but I'll tell you one thing. When people say to you, that is rubbish, that's nuts, about technology and all of that, just remember that it wasn't so long ago when there was a property bubble in Ireland and people said, that's nuts, you should go, as Bertie Hearn said, hang yourself or whatever, and the OECD were wrong, the IMF were wrong, every body of experts were wrong. It was a very simple thing to predict. So don't let that stop. We need to trust each other, we need to move forward, and if anybody wants to chat after this, I'll be around for the next 2 days. So thank you all for coming. And the book. The Nicky said, buy the book. Buy the book. Okay. Thanks very much, everyone.